think this won't be an overly long presentation. It's fairly straightforward. I assume there will probably be more questions, and we'll do our best to answer those. This will be recorded, is being recorded, and we'll get that posted on Uniguest. Additionally, with all of the questions that are asked, we will write those down. We'll get those formatted in a printout, and it'll probably take a week or so, but we will get those questions out as a frequently asked question sheet. So just want to make sure that everybody has all the information. There are some nuances. We're going to do our best to explain everything and how the queue system works. And I want to, for my Building 5 residents, if you received a specific note to you, that means that you are not on the queue system, and I apologize. My intent was to communicate that clearly, and I had a couple questions, and I said, well, that's why they got the letter. And then I went and reread it, and no, it wasn't clear in that letter. Rita was gracious enough to point out that I did have 2 other people proof it for me to make sure it was clear, so. But my name was on it, that's right. For Building 5 folks, I do have a list. We did do an audit up here, so if you're in here and you're questioning after the meeting, I'm happy to review that with you, with whether you're on the queue system or not. Usually I start off, I believe everybody in here knows me, but we do have some guests. My name is Joe Amon Marshall. I have the privilege of being the Executive Director here at Trillium Woods. I'm joined this morning by Scott Doherty, our Senior Director of Operations Management with LCS, so he's here to help explain the queue system and answer any questions that we might have. Okay. So we'll jump right in. So a little bit of history. So in 2015, when Trillium opened, we had what I'm going to refer to as the original contract. With the original contract, the refund of the loan that you loaned Trillium Woods was tied to the reselling of your specific unit. There's an asterisk here, or of a different unit in the case of an internal transfer. So sometimes we have folks that transfer from maybe a smaller apartment to a larger apartment, and that affected the refund payout because now that refund was tied to the smaller apartment that was transferred from. I know that's confusing. It took me quite a while to wrap my head around it. In any of those cases, the maximum time frame for the loan repayment was 36 months. Okay, so Trillium Woods could not keep that loan any more than 36 months. In our 10 going on 11-year history, it's never taken that long for that repayment to happen. Okay. In late summer of 2023, we went to what I'm going to call the legacy or the queue contract. With the queue contract, loan payouts are placed into a queue when they're due to be paid. So there could be 3 in the queue, there could be 1, there could be 7. Refunds are paid out as residences are sold in that order. Did I explain that well? No? I heard to make sure of both. I'll have some scenarios. So I've got 4 scenarios for us, and in those scenarios, I'm going to use Residence XL, and we're going to say that that Residence XL has 2,000 square feet, and Residence M is 1,000 square feet. Okay? So scenario 1 with the original agreement. If we're going to say a resident passes away in August of 2026, and I use passes away because that's typically when refunds start. That process starts is when a resident passes away and is no longer a resident of Trillium Woods. So a resident passes away in August of 26. The resident resided in an M residence, or I'm going to say medium, so that 1,000 square foot. That unit does not resell until December of 2028. So over 2 years later, it takes 2 years to sell that residence. And then the planned closing on that M unit happens in February of 2029. In that scenario, under the original agreement, the loan is repaid in February of 2029. So that's 30 months after the closing. 30 months after the resident passes and it's sold when that closing happens. Any questions on that scenario? Did I explain that one well? Okay, good. All right, I'm going to move on to scenario number 2, also under the original agreement. So in scenario number 2, a resident passes away in August of 26. This resident resided in an XL style residence. A current resident is on an internal list for a larger unit. So this resident that's going to move into the XL resides in the smaller unit, in the M style. The current resident transfers to the larger in October, paying the difference in the entrance fee. That now vacant M style remains unoccupied. In this scenario, the loan for the XL unit is not repaid until the M style or the smaller residence sells.
Wow.
Right. And this scenario happens quite frequently, and we're seeing more and more as people want larger and larger apartments. This is one of the main benefits of the Q contract, well, I'll get into a little bit later. Any questions on this scenario? Rick, Rita's got a...
Reverse it. Say that they're in an XL and they move down to an M because their partner passed away. What happens then?
That's a good question, one I didn't anticipate. If a resident is in an XL and downsizes, the same scenario applies. Kim? That it would now be tied to the larger apartment.
They don't get their refund until after they pass away.
Right, but the refund wouldn't occur until after the resident is no longer a resident at Trillium.
But there could be multiple transfers in that situation. Hold on.
Likely in this case, there's going to be multiple transfers in that situation. So this resident would move to a smaller unit, which would open that larger unit, but there's probably going to be a different resident that wants to transfer into that larger unit. So then there would be another internal transfer into that larger unit, which would then open a different smaller unit, which would then move your refund to that second smaller unit, which would go back to Joe's scenario here. So the loan would likely move 3 times. The only way it would stay in the larger unit is if an outside person was the one that was purchasing that larger unit. Again, that refund would not be paid until the resident passes away and leaves the community.
Thank you, Kim. That gets, there's a domino effect there with internal transfers. It gets quite messy under the original agreement. Rick?
When the final resident passes away, does our estate receive information as to when that unit sold, when it is sold, will be paid?
Yes, we keep in communication with where those funds are going. There's no timeline other than that 36 months, right? So there's not necessarily ongoing communication. We do have some families that say, hey, when can we expect this? What we always say is we want those apartments sold as well. It's in our best interest also. So we do everything we can to sell those. Yes, Don. I got you.
If I understand it right, the M-style resident at the end, that sells. I'm still alive in a bigger unit. Do I get the refund then, or do you wait till I'm dead?
The latter. Refunds are only paid out when residents are no longer residents and the unit has sold.
There's one caveat to that. If you happen to be alive and you're here for 30 years, then we would pay that amount to you. But you have to live in the community for 30 years before that would happen.
That is true. There is I believe that's a state law that the maximum time we can hold those dollars are 30 years. So if you're still a resident 30 years later, you automatically get your loan back.
You taking notes, Fran?
All right, I'm going to go on to scenario 3. This is under the Q agreement. So under the Q system, if a resident passes in August of this year, and that resident resided in an M-style unit, the refund due, let's say, is $500,000. An XL unit sells. Now, the resident didn't live in the XL, they lived in the M. We collect entrance fee of $1 million on that XL style. Then the loan of $500,000 is refunded. The remaining $500,000 is booked as net entry fee income for Trillium Woods. The next loan that's due starts this process over. Did I explain that well? I'll do it again. A resident that resides in an M-style, a medium-sized apartment, passes away in August. Their refund amount due is $500,000. They're first in the queue to be repaid. We sell an XL style apartment or garden home, and the entrance fee for that is $1 million. So now Trillium has $1 million that is available to pay out the next loan that's due. In that scenario, we pay out the $500,000 back. The remaining $500,000 that's left over is booked as income, as net entrance fee income for Trillium Woods. And then the next loan that's due would start the process over, meaning we would have to have new sale or sales to pay out the next loan that's due.
Is that only if one person is in the queue to be paid out?
Yes.
What if there were two people?
That's why, yes. If there were two people in the queue, the $500,000 is repaid. The other $500,000 is booked as income to Trillium Woods. The next person in the queue moves to the top. We have to have more sales to pay that next refund. Did I make that clear? Yeah, I figured that's where all the questions are. Okay, I'm sorry. Mike?
In this scenario, if the top of the queue is an XL unit and an M unit sells, does that money, what happens to that money?
That's my next scenario. That one I did anticipate. Okay. Don?
Just a quick one. Don't you have to pay somebody who buys that XL unit? Don't you have to pay the person who owned it before something out of that million?
That's, Don's question is, don't we have to pay back the previous resident of the XL? That's one of the main reasons of trying to get everybody on the same system. That's the benefit for Trillium Woods, right? Kim, right now we've got a 60-40 mix of original contract and Q contract, and that's incredibly messy. So that's the benefit for Trillium Woods. The benefit to the residents is that it should average out or reduce the overall time frame that residents' refunds are paid out. It should reduce that because it's not tied just to one particular unit with all those extra dominoes that sometimes fall. Yes, sir. Rita's right there.
Under the current system, all the loans, whatever happens, go to residents, if repaid to residents. Under this, you're booking income to Trillium Woods. That doesn't seem to me to be right. I mean, fair.
Actually, there is income in the current system to Trillium Woods. So if if an XL unit sells right now, and I'm sorry, let me use this same scenario. In this scenario, an M unit sells, or there's a refund due, and that refund, the entry fee is $750,000, and we owe $500,000 on the loan. That remaining $250,000 is booked as net entrance fee income. So that still works the same way. It's because everybody's on the 80% return of capital, or 99% of residents are on that return of capital. As entrance fees have increased over the years, a resident that's moved in 2015, their entry fee is much lower than a resident that's going to move in 2028. So the difference in that gets booked as income. That's part of the model of how life plan communities operate. Of course.
Just one comment with that. The word income makes it sound like the community is making a ton of money, and that's not exactly what's happening. That additional 20% is used to pay down debt, interest on the loans, things like that that are below the net operating income. If we didn't have that extra cash coming in to pay that interest and those type of expenses, the monthly service fees would have to be a lot higher. And so that's why we use that additional 20% dollar value to pay those larger amount of cash outs that we need. So it's not like Trillium is just pocketing a bunch of money. That's not what's happening. So if that's your concern, keep in mind that there is that interest expense, debt money that can be quite substantial in dollar value.
Thank you. Rick? Oh, sorry, Rita, I didn't see you.
Go ahead.
It's too late.
Okay.
So if you have an XL unit, number one in the queue, but the M unit right below it sells, what happens?
That's my next scenario. I'll get there.
Okay.
I'll get right to you, Don. We've got one more over here.
You talked about the 500,000, 1,500,000. She comes in with talking about 20%. You haven't talked about 20%, so how is that into this? And the other thing was, you talked about the debt that Trillium owes, the whole community owes as far as for the building. I sort of thought that our units paid for, the pool, the building of the pool, et cetera, and our monthly fees paid for the maintenance. But is that wrong?
That's not incorrect. Two-part question. The 20% Kim was referring to, that is the 20%. So you pay, if it's $1 million, 20% goes to Trillium directly. The loan is for 800,000 of that million. So that's where that 20%, that goes to pay off things like the construction loan. Scott, anything else to add?
Well, for the building 5, just for example, I don't know if you're a new resident, moved into building 5, but all of the initial entry fees that were paid on building 5, you're correct. We collect those initial entry fees, and those are used to pay down the construction loan for the new building. And what Joe's referring to, everybody in here, I think for the most part, is on an 80%, what we call return of capital, meaning the entry fee that you pay, 80% of that will go to your estate or to you. If you were to say, you have family situation change and you need to move to California and you moved out, 80% of the refund from your, again, all of you I think are on the older contract. So upon the resale of your unit, 80% would come back to you. The 20% would be what is maintained by the community. And we call it now net entrance fees. That's the 20% that we get. If you're here for 10 years, those entrance fees have increased in value. So again, the community would still get 20% plus any increase in the entry fees over time. That's where the community gets, the ownership gets the money. The monthly fees that you pay, that pays for the operations of the day-to-day operations. So food service, all the staff, property taxes, all of those things come out of your monthly fees. So just want to make sure you understand there's two buckets of money, and I think that's what Kim was kind of referring to.
Yeah, and the capital.
Thank you, Scott.
Did I understand your first statement that no matter what unit you're in, you would get your payment back in 36 months period?
That is correct.
Okay, so anyone could count on that,
Yes, ma'am.
no matter which.
Anyone on the original contract?
On the original contract?
Yes. Don, there is a maximum number of questions per resident.
You gotta be nice to slow people, you do. Let's say you got an M guy, 500,000 you owe him, okay? You sell the X unit and you sell it for $1 million and you owe the previous owner $750,000. Now you're $250,000 short of being able to pay that M guy. Tell me how the money gets divided.
Let me move on to scenario 4. Ooh. I think this is going to answer that question. So in this scenario, which we've had, a resident passes away in August that resided in an XL style unit. The refund due is $1.5 million. We sell an M style unit and $500,000 entrance fee is collected and held because we owe $1 million. That's the next loan that's due, right? We're holding that $500,000. Now we have to sell more apartments or another apartment to make up the refund. So then an X style unit sells a month later and we collect $1.5 million entrance fee. So now there's $2 million in that refund pot. So we're able to pay the 1.5 back. The remaining 500,000 gets booked as that net entrance fee income for Trillium. And again, the next refund due moves to the top of the list. The process starts all over. Did that explain that scenario? All right, I'm going to move on. I'm sure. Yes, Diane.
You just said that under the original contract, there was a 36-month limit. Under the Q contract with the necessary second one, could it go longer than 36?
So Scott and I spoke about this. Everybody that's on the original contract, we will leave that 36-month language in there. I know there are a handful of residents, I think the first 10 for phase 1 that deposit or closed, they had an 18-month clause. We will honor that as well. So you can be guaranteed that whatever your original contract said, if the 36 months was in there, we will leave that in the amended contract. So you will still have that guarantee. Alice.
Doesn't 1.5 plus 1.5 equal 3 million? XL sold 1.5?
Well, we owe 1.5 to the refund. We sell one for 500,000, and then we sell another one for 1.5, so that equals 2 million, and we owe 1.5 million.
Both refunds are 1.5.
There's only one refund due in this scenario.
But first says the resident reside in XL. The
Yes.
refund is 1.5. The XL unit sells another 1.5.
An M unit sells for 500,000. One's a refund and one's a sell of the two 1.5s.
I'm one of those 50%ers. And I believed that 50% came back to me, my husband, and the other 50 was gone.
That is correct. So we do have a handful of people. The vast majority of residents are on an 80% return of capital. We do have a handful on a 50% return of capital. We have a handful that are on what's called a traditional, and there is no refund. So not everybody's the same. So in your scenario, Alice, 50%, you would still get the 50% back.
But the other 50 is long gone.
Yes, ma'am. Just like the 20% for the
So
for the 80%.
it's not as if the 50% that I don't get is now suddenly in your pocket.
No, ma'am.
It's gone.
Correct.
In that
You've-
pocket and gone. Okay.
You prepay
thank
your
you.
healthcare services, yes. So in these, the benefits of the Q system, as I see them, your loan repayment is not tied to one specific unit, whether that's your unit or whether that gets transferred to a different unit because of the internal transfers. It should reduce the payment timeline regardless of apartment size. I think everyone's aware the larger apartments tend to be more desirable and they tend to sell more quickly. We see that typically our smaller units have the longer repayment time. Again, we have not hit that 36-month mark yet in our almost 11 years. If there's an internal transfer, that does not affect the refund. Because as sales happen, refunds are paid out. As I mentioned, Diane, the maximum time before the refund paid remains 36 months or whatever your original language said, if it was earlier for a very small percentage. Things that I think you should consider: refunds are entered in the queue when they become due. Refunds are paid out in that order as they enter the list. And also a caveat or an asterisk are residents that are in the health center. So if a resident in independent living is permanently assigned to the health center and resides in the health center for 6 years, their apartment may have resold twice over here. When a death happens in the health center, in that scenario, those refunds get paid immediately. The other thing to be aware of is a sale of multiple smaller units will be needed to pay out a refund for larger units. So if a larger unit, if an XL unit is the next one to be paid out, and we sell one of our least spacious units, it might take 3 of those smaller units to have the dollars there to pay out that extra large unit. Dennis?
Why in the scenario where you described the larger unit being sold and the excess not staying in the pool when a smaller unit is paid out, why when it seems like we're going on, we have to do the same thing both ways. Is there some accounting rule or some reason why that first sale that you talked about before, the $500,000 or whatever the difference was, went to income that caused all that controversy? But in the case of smaller, in the case described right here, you have to build up a number of smaller units to pay out the larger unit.
Right. You wanna?
Yeah, I do think we're, I don't know, Kim, if you want to wait, it is kind of accounting just to try to keep them in track of it. And I think one thing you may be asking, why is this change being made? This is something that we've seen as far as the way it works today. Sometimes we can have sales, so it can be lumpy, right? We have a bunch of units that need to be sold, so it delays the timeline for refunds. Folks may be in units that are more difficult to sell, or different things impact the location, for example, and things like that. What we're trying to do is just even it out, both from a resident perspective as well as from our perspective as far as more predictable, I guess, if you will, as far as that a net entrance fee income coming back to the community. So we're trying to make them one for one when we can, but there are going to be scenarios where we owe a refund on a larger unit or more, a larger refund is due. So it may take two small units to get enough income in to pay that refund. And then there's the other scenario that Joe gave where maybe there is additional funds left, but if we just save that in the pool, then the next unit we may not have enough to pay. So we're trying to make it one for one as best we can. So I don't know, probably.
Real quick, I think also part of that, we depend on those entrance fee dollars to help run the operations, as Kim said, paying down loans, especially capital expenses, because your monthly service fees do not pay for capital expenses. So things like redoing, the dishwasher breaks, and that's $30,000, or redoing the concrete areas, and that's $100,000, right? The income from the net entry fee income helps pay for those. If we put that all into the account for refunds, we wouldn't have that income. I asked that same question when we started going to this system. I thought, oh, this is going to be super simple. And anything to add, Kim?
Also, Dennis, with your question, needing multiple sales in order to cover that higher dollar value loan, at the end of the day, maybe it takes 2 or 3 sales. Most likely it'll be 2 sales, but it just depends on the dollar value. There's likely going to be some money left over there that's going to go into that net entrance fee income bucket. It will be very unlikely that it will be exactly the same dollar value as the refund that's going to be paid out. So it'll be the same scenario as if it was 1 unit. It just might take multiple units to cover that larger dollar value that we need to refund. So at the end, when you do all the math, there'll be that extra money to put in the bucket to help pay for those capital items and so forth. Does that make sense?
No.
No?
No. The only question is, why does the excess just not stay in the pool? So if you take a second unit and sell it the very next day, now you're short money, but if you kept the $500,000 from that original transaction that you're now going to put to income, why don't you hold it for the next day and pay out the next person when the next unit's sold?
That's Dennis's question is, why don't we just keep all of those those extra dollars, those excess dollars?
Nothing to do with the 20%, nothing to do with anything else.
The answer to the question, why don't we just keep those dollars in to pay the next loan, is because then we don't have that income. We don't have that net entry fee income. We don't have the cash for capital. It's not that much different how it operates now under the original contract. Again, if a resident has been here for 10 years, that net entrance fee has increased. Let's say it's gone up $200,000. So we pay out the loan, that extra $200,000 that's higher from when they moved in, that goes to that income line that then goes to pay for the capital expenses and the loan stuff and those dollars. If we just kept that in a repayment account, we wouldn't have the income to do those.
It's really a cash flow thing, Dennis. It's really so we have cash to pay for capital items.
It's really just a cash flow thing, so that we have that cash to pay for the capital items that we need to purchase each year. That's what it comes down to.
Gene?
This is a little off of the topic here, but all the information I ever saw in writing about this was 2 letters my sons received saying, here's the amount of money you will receive. I never heard any information like what you're talking about that would have said how much they were going, the prices were going to go, or the thing you were going to earn and what. I never saw any details about getting this money back.
It's in your contract, the loan agreement. I think
Page 1
the way that the business operates is not part of your loan agreement. You know, as things start to cost more and as salaries go up and as you know, inflation occurs, that's why those entrance fees go up. Just like that's why your monthly service fees go up each year to cover those costs. Rick?
Joe, is this LCS wide or is this unique to Trillium?
This is LCS wide. Yes.
And will there be, maybe, I'm not sure of it exactly addressing Dennis's concern, but is there going to be a separate account set up, Kim, to basically to hold these when you sell and then get the gains? Is it, how do you, as opposed to throwing it back into a blank pot, do you sort of segregate that so that there is a pot that accumulates?
Will there be a separate account, Kim, a refund account per se?
There's not a separate account, and there likely won't be, because the moment something sells, I go and look at that list and I pay out whoever the next person is within within a week. I like to get those refunds paid immediately. I know in the contract it says 14 days for the most part. I don't like to wait 14 days. I want to get that off my books just because I like to keep things clean. So as soon as we get the money for the closing, I see it cleared the bank account. I've already got the check in motion. It's cut. It's sitting on my desk. I see it, the new person's amount cleared the bank, and I mail that check out immediately. So there's no really holding that because I've already cut the check and it's in motion to be mailed and sent to the person's trust or family or whoever it's meant to go to.
So, I thought I was understanding, but the more I hear the questions, the more complicated it gets for me. So I'm gonna ask you if I'm getting this or not. I die. My unit payout would be $500,000. There's a larger unit where people are gonna get $700,000. Mine doesn't pay for that. You have to put that, so my $500,000 then goes in an account, correct?
For lack of a better term, yes.
Yeah, okay, mine goes into an account, and then another unit sells, and then the unit sells for whatever that sells for, but it's enough to pay the first person on the queue. But then there's money left over from the sale, and some of that could go into the account, but I don't know whether it does or not. And the other question is, if you have money in an account that you're getting interest on, which I would assume you would do, who gets the interest? Does that go into the fund for the payouts, or does that go to Trillium? No.
We don't pay out interest for refunds. Your loan amount that's in your agreement is your loan amount. There's no interest paid on the loan amount. I just want to be really clear. I think we've gotten a little bit into the weeds of accounts and business practices. Basically, once one loan has been paid, the whole process starts all over again. I think that's what I need you to take away. All right? Once one loan has been paid, we need to sell more units to pay the next loan. Regardless of any money that's left over, the process starts over. Is that clear?
Yeah, Joe, I'm just wondering, I guess with a very kind of almost uniform aging population in 4 of the 5 buildings, many who have been here for 10 years, is there a likelihood that the queue isn't going to have that 1 or 2 ideal sales, but a very long line of them that are suddenly available. And in that case, the traditional plan is going to favor those with larger units who are more likely to get the deposit for their beneficiaries in a year rather than 3.
Except for internal transfers. For those of you in larger units, we have residents that do not live here that have bought a smaller unit with the sole purpose of being on the internal wait list for a larger unit.
Right.
In that scenario, it's here, right? If a transfer occurs, it ties your refund to the smaller unit that the transfer happened from. It could actually, that will make your refund take longer. That's the benefit of the queue system to folks in the larger style residences. We probably have 4 or 5 right now on the internal wait list. And whether they're residing here, waiting for a larger apartment, or they just have purchased that smaller unit and they have no plans on moving in until their desired unit becomes available. That's the benefit. There. Rita's coming.
Oh, it was on the other side.
I waited until you got.
I know you did. I was standing right here for how long?
My question, it concerns if we do not switch over to the queue system, what happens to when it's time for our unit to be paid out?
That's a good question. If you choose not to switch to the queue system, your refund will work just like it always does. It will be tied to your specific unit. Again, an internal transfer could affect that. It would work just like it works now. It doesn't go into the queue. If your, 2 scenarios here. If your refund is due and the person that buys your unit is from the outside, your refund will get paid as soon as that closing happens. If your refund is due and this scenario happens where someone internally transfers, your refund then gets tied to that most likely smaller unit. And then once that sells, regardless of if the funds are there or not, regardless of the insurance fee for that smaller unit, your refund gets paid out. Or 36 months. Did I? Yeah. Abby's got another question.
Yeah. The way you stated that, or 36 months, if the first thing happens first, the unit has sold, then the transaction, it goes to.
You get it right away.
It's not in or 36 months at that point.
The 36 is just that maximum amount of time.
If there's a transfer.
If there's a transfer and it takes that long for that other unit, that now your refund is tied to a different unit. That's super complicated. Jim?
Joe, is this going to be a limited time offer or something that we have to decide forever and amen within 15 or 20 minutes?
It is a limited time offer, but I think that, and this is subject to change. So for next steps, compliance and legal are in the process of completing the agreements because we're going to have a couple different types based on whether it's an 80%, whether it's the 36 months. We want to make sure everybody's ties to each individual based on what your current agreement is. We, myself, Kim, whomever, we're happy to have one-on-one meetings. I anticipate we'll need to do that. And if you want to bring family into it as well, I understand that. At this time, we are thinking residents would have till September 1st to decide. Thinking that timeline, that gives us time to get those agreements finalized. The samples, we would have those available for your review if you're interested, and then work to get those done on a timeline.
Jim Lee.
Mr. Lee?
From what I can tell, the only advantage to me as a longtime resident is that maybe my estate would get the remainder of my upfront fee a little bit earlier. So what I'm trying to estimate, if it's a real advantage, how much sooner would they get it? And you know, if the limit, the max is 3 years, in the scale of eternity, that's not much. And you say the current split is 60-40, so maybe 150 people are already ahead of me in the damn queue. So if there's an 8% turnover attrition rate where people, you know, expiring, getting their picture on the credenza of death, that's roughly 22 dozen a year?
I think we typically plan for about 26 apartments becoming available each year.
So that's 2 years worth already.
So I forgot to ask, Kim, do you know the average, well, how long does average take to pay a loan back over the last 10 years? Do you have an idea?
It's about 1.5 years, probably on average with everybody that we paid out. But keep in mind, you don't get on the queue until you pass away and the apartment is released. So right now we have nobody on the queue list. So just because you sign the document that you want to get on the queue system, you're not actually on the list until you are no longer with us.
So you don't get in line until you're actually dead.
Correct.
Nobody died.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so guess what? To think about whether that actually makes a difference in my particular situation.
Right.
You're dead, so what's the
Hi, I actually have, excuse me, 2 questions. One in line with what Jim said. I came in a little bit late, but I can see what the benefit is to Trillium Woods. What is the benefit to the resident? And what if the majority of residents don't opt into this program?
The benefit to the resident is that it should reduce the loan payout time overall. Typically, again, larger residences tend to be more desirable and sell more quickly. So the goal is that it reduces the amount of length of time it takes to repay loans on average. And your next question, what happens if residents don't choose? Then it's just messy for Trillium then. It's just more difficult for us. We'll manage that, absolutely. But it just makes it a little more difficult for Kim to be like, this person's in the queue, this person's not, and then we would manage that based on the contract. Right, the benefit for the resident is hopefully speeding up the process. Did I explain that well?
Yeah, that's our whole goal, is just to try to get the refunds out faster to people. But you know, I've got this either way, so whatever you decide is good, because my whole job is to be, you know, watch everything with a fine-tooth comb, and I love my job, and that's what I do, so you don't have to worry about it. If I have to keep doing this, I'm all good with that, but our goal is to get your money to your families or to wherever you want it as fast as possible, and that's why we've set up this system.
Yes.
We're looking at this with today's statistics. How far out does Trillium project population changes, population growth, population decline? And is that something that we should be looking at for making a decision? For example, baby boomers, the start of the baby boomers you're seeing now. But what happens when we get through the baby boomers bubble? And is that something to be looking at as well?
Well, I hope to be retired by the time. You know, I think my opinion on this is there's no risk to you. That 36-month clause will remain there. I think the benefit is, again, should speed up the refund. I don't think I'm worried about future logistics or statistics. We budget 5 years at a time, so when we're budgeting for 2027, we also take into consideration 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, and we look at those numbers lining up. It's super frustrating for me, and thank God for Kim here, who keeps track of all of that for us, but we do have a long-term view. That's one of the many strengths of LCS, is taking that long-term view. And again, as a corporation, feel that this is the right move for residents and also for LCS to help us be stronger. Cheryl?
I have a concern, and I hope you bear with me. A couple of months ago, I read on the computer about this elderly couple like Dennis and I, that they had moved into a senior living community. Their deposit was like $900 and some thousand. And not long after that, the facility filed bankruptcy. Now, bankruptcy was not a word in our vocabulary when we moved in here. So I started digging a little deeper, and I found that within the last 6 years, 16 facilities like Trillium have gone bankrupt. 3 reasons: COVID, which we know we have up with everything. Secondly, the facilities did not have the money to refund the families whose loved one had passed away. And number 3, overbuilding. Now we hear about another phase coming in here. And then I looked a little further, and 38 states regulate facilities like ours. Minnesota doesn't. And it said, before you put your name on the dotted line, be sure you check the financial stability of the facility, which we can't hear because we never see numbers, we see percentages, which don't mean diddly squat, because 20% of what? $100 or 100,000. And so I'm listening to all of this, and it's kind of scary because coming up with all this scenarios kind of leads me to believe that Trillium isn't as well off as we're all believing it is.
A couple comments on that. One, yes, there have been some recent articles, 16 life plan type communities have gone bankrupt over the last 6 or, actually it goes back to, I believe, about 10 years.
6 years.
6 years. That represents a very tiny percentage of continuing care retirement communities, and none of those were LCS communities. LCS is in a very, very strong position. You know, the media likes to hype those kinds of things. I'll let Scott.
Yep. I'd be interested in the 16. We're aware of about 6 life plan communities.
No, they were all CCRC.
We're all CCRC, okay. Yeah, true. But one thing I wanted to comment on that is there was one particular in New York that got a lot of press called the Harborside. You can look it up. And the Harborside was a community that we were actually interested in going in and helping them out, coming out of bankruptcy. They actually went through bankruptcy 3 times. And the reason being is they were not-for-profit, and they would get bonds for the construction of the property, but they over-leveraged in their loans, so they didn't have enough coming in to pay off the loans. The one benefit of LCS is, a strong financial position, And we have a strong partnership that is allowing us to move things forward. So giving us confidence when we added the expansion to the community and things like that. Many of these cases where there's bankruptcies, they actually call us to come in, once it goes through the process, we're usually getting a call to come in and see if we can help them out in those scenarios. There is a company that we work with that has also gone in, and what they've done is they've backed off the entry fee and turned them into rentals. And in that case, that's where folks lose their refunds because they're no longer selling it as entry fees. So it is something to be aware of and cautious of. But I would hope that, over the years, we've been in business now going on 55 years. And I've always said, we're only, we have one bad where we don't make a refund. That's the negative press that we're not gonna be interested in. So we have strong financial backing. If the 36-month scenario, if we haven't resold the unit, we're gonna make good on that refund. So that's, we've not paid a refund in a timely manner that's suggested. So hopefully you'll have confidence in us as an operator and as an owner. The other thing you may be asking, I was saying to Joe, if I were in your seat, I'd be skeptical. Why are they making this change? What's in it for them? Financially, there's no benefit to us. We're gonna make the same, we're calling it net entrance fees. Once we've paid the refund, the money that comes back to Trillium Woods, it's gonna be the same, whether you're on the contract you're on today, or if you change to the queue. What it does for us, and the word, Dennis, I didn't come up with, and Kim did, is cash flow. It levels out our cash flow. The way it is today, we make it work. We call it lumpy. Sometimes we'll have heavy net entrance fee, but then there'll be other times where we pay a lot of refunds and our net entrance fee dollars are lower. Over the long run, it all works out the same, so we don't get too worried about it. But we're just trying to make it all the same from a refunds perspective. Joe is the first person all of our communities have introduced this new contract. That's the contract we're selling going forward. But Joe has kind of said, let's introduce this to all of you that are not on the Q contract to determine if it would be something that you would be interested in moving to that contract. And so that's the introduction today. I think we're gonna get the contract, the addendum, and then we can produce that and share that with you. I know Joe's happy to meet with you as Kim, myself, others, and we can meet one-on-one, because it probably would be best to understand your scenario, your particular situation, and we can play that out for you. And then you can decide. You can stay on the agreement you're on, no problem. If you see a benefit to the queue, obviously for us it would be better if we could get more people on that down the road as we go forward. So.
And by better, you mean easier for us to smooth it.
One other thing, just with regards to the financials, we do put the most recent disclosure statement in the library every year in April. That does have a full version of our annual audit in there. So you will see the full financial statements. You're welcome to look at that anytime. That does have numbers in it. It does have, it's a pretty thick document, 20, 30 some pages that you're welcome to read through. It's very insightful. I love getting it every year and looking at it. So if you're worried about numbers, you can look at it right there, okay? So that's updated every April. It should have the most recent version in it from this year's audit.
Dennis.
Thank you for answering that question, because my question was going to be the last 2 or 3 years. When I attend this meeting, I always ask, this doesn't mean anything to me because you have it in percentages. The percentages of whatever category you're in don't mean anything. And I was concerned about that, so I'm glad that the real numbers are here and available. and can be looked at for residents anytime they wish. So I appreciate that. I also was pleased to hear when my wife did some research that 36 or 38 of the lifetime communities submit to the state a statement every year so that it is reviewed, 38 states. It can be reviewed by the people in our government, or the state of Minnesota, so they can look at it and see if they see any discrepancies in that, and they can call it to attention, and maybe those ones that are faltering can be taken care of on a sooner period of time. We have not seen any, I have not seen, and I was not aware that there were these figures that could be looked at by the residents to see if in fact there were some areas like food that was 50%, say, as fees that come in, or an outlandish number. So I'm wondering, do you have any concerns about submitting that along with the other 38 states for review by the state if they have a program like that?
The disclosure statement does get submitted, it gets filed with the state. So it has to be, and that's part of our annual process. That's not a new process. The disclosure statement, you got one when you closed. We hand them to every resident. When you close, that's in your paperwork, and then every year it gets filed with the state, and once it's been accepted, it gets put in the library, and it's always available. It's an annual disclosure.
Thank you for that information.
You're welcome. All right, well, if you do have questions, I'm sure as you go home, you'll think of more. Please send me an email, write them down, put them in the suggestion box. We can compile those with what goes out. Again, this presentation will print the slides and compile everything to try to be as thorough and answer as many questions as possible. And then we'll figure out next steps going forward. I'm not sure if another meeting, group meeting would be beneficial, but definitely, as Scott said, happy to meet individually or with family members if they're interested. And yeah, thank you all for coming today and for participating.